Good morning, folks. How are you doing? Today is the 5th day of June 2024. I don't know what time it is because I'm not wearing my watch. What time is it, Scott? It is about 10 minutes till 9 in the morning. Okay, it's a good thing she showed up because here's the deal. If things continue the way they are, I'm going to have to start eating cats. And where do you think we're starting? Huh? Where do you think I'm starting? I'm starting with the cat that pees on my shit. Yes, she's a female sprayer. And she'll only do it when I'm not looking, which is why I have a hard time making a video with you, with her sitting on the thing behind me, because she doesn't think I can see. What? She turns it back to something. I forget. So here's the deal. If you want to save Gabby, there's ways to do it down below. God damn, that's awful, Scott. What am I going to do? Look at her. She's pudgy, aren't you? Do you have a problem with me starting off eating you first? Gabby? Huh? No? Oh, good. See? She's got no problem with it. Anyway, there's ways to support down below. One of these days I'm going to die in this place alone, and I'm going to be found, and all four of them will be nibbling on me. Oh, God, Jesus. These are the chains I forged in life. How are you doing? Anyway, if you can help, please do. If you can't, don't worry about it. She might make it through the month. And again, she might not. Hi, folks. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about fucking this peace deal, because Biden's people have come out and done exactly what I told you they were going to do from the beginning. They're claiming, oh well, Hamas isn't going to sign off on this, and Hamas isn't going to agree with it, which just proves to you what terrorists Hamas are, what evil terrorists that'll kill their own people. I said that. People go, Scott, stop saying that. That's not what they say Hamas did. No bullshit. That's exactly what Jake Sullivan just said. Hamas are evil terrorists who kill their own people. That's exactly fucking what Jake Sullivan said, and it's on the Associated Press's YouTube page. Let me show you. I wrote an entire article here this morning talking about this. We'll get into that in a second. But here is Jake Sullivan saying, Hamas are just evil dictatorship terrorists that'll kill their own people.
The proposal as described by President Biden is a proposal that Israel accepted before and continues to accept today. And the ball's in Hamas's court as to whether they're going to accept it or not. Now, we are waiting for a response from Hamas. The president said in his speech, not that Hamas had accepted the proposal, but that they should. So he acknowledged on Friday Hamas may choose that they think it's just better to let the war and the suffering and the violence continue. That wouldn't be terribly out of character for a vicious and brutal terrorist group. But what we...
A vicious and brutal terrorist group to allow the suffering and the killing to continue. In other words, Hamas are just evil dictatorship and terrorists that kill their own people. You thought I was fucking kidding. Nope. You thought I was kidding about eating Gabby. This is what I wrote this morning. Jake Sullivan's statement on Biden war crime peace plan. It's all Hamas's fault. President Biden's peace plan is anything but. The plan includes a built-in scheme to allow Israel to continue to occupy unpopulated areas of Gaza While it says absolutely nothing about the two-state solution Biden and his people have been supposedly pushing since this thing began. That's off the table, as they say. Now it's everything from the river to the sea will be Israel. Let me stop for a second. I saw a video from Vice a little while ago, and they had some embedded bullshit asshole with some troops back in the day in Afghanistan in a forward operating base. And they laid out the plan, the narrator did, as to what the forward operating bases did. What they did was they got these proxies, Afghan warlords, drug fucking lords, places, people like that, criminals, to band together and to go in village by village to destabilize the village, to chase out the fucking Taliban, to capture, to kill them, to torture them, to chase the fucking Taliban out, which would make the fucking, either the village unpopulated, just like we did in fucking Syria, in East Syria, with ISIS and the glorious Kurds. Or it would make it ungoverned, in which case we would then insert our own fucking terrorist drug lords, former drug lords, drug kingpins, murderers, rapists, people like that. And you say, Scott, that's not a nice way to fucking generalize about all these people that we worked on in Afghanistan. Understand this, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. In that fucking one clip from that fucking Vice thing, it was showing the Americans trying to educate not the Taliban, but some of a band of criminals that we had that were in the process of trying to chase the government of this country out from village to village to town, right? And that's why it's a forward operating base. And they're trying to teach them how to separate bathing water from drinking water, and you got to wash before you fucking eat and wash your hands. And these guys were like, who the fuck do you think you're talking about? We're grown men. The fuck is wrong with you? Stop talking to us like we're children and idiots and savages, and tell us how to fucking get rid of landmines and spot landmines, and tell us useful stuff we can use. And so, of course, you know, they also showed the interaction after that. This is an actual interaction they showed, where this is a fucking 23-year-old, 24-year-old talking to grown fucking men in their own countries. Now, these are grown criminals and terrorists, but still they're grown men. 23-year-old, 24-year-old talking to them like they're fucking children. And they didn't like it one bit. In fact, had that dude been by himself talking to grown men like that, those grown men like that, let's just say the ass raping would have begun. It's that kind of attitude that we have and that our military passes on, teaches young men and women in this country when going into occupied areas like that one in Afghanistan, the right war, according to Barack Obama, the right war. That's what they teach them, that they are below us. Does it sound vaguely familiar about, you know, let's be honest, does it sound vaguely familiar like, you know, what the Zionists think about Muslims and Arabs? Vaguely? There was another section in that film where some of these guys, this proxy army that we, you know, cultivate out there to attack the legitimate government in Afghanistan, the right war, according to Barack Obama, based on what happened on September 11th, 2001. That's the right war. Regime changing the Taliban, because the Taliban wasn't on board with our national interests. But these guys, our troops discovered 4 dudes who were locked in a room with no water and no food for a couple days. by this, let's just say it's Salvador option. We'll call it what it is. And these terrorists, these fucking, this death squad that we use. But we have strict rules on death squads. You can only just randomly kill anybody working for the Taliban government, including somebody at the post office or an elected mayor or a town leader. You can kill them if he works for the government of fucking Afghanistan. This is, and it was stated in such a way that it was completely normal. It was normalized. It was like, this is nothing. This is okay. We expect this because, you know, Taliban evil, Taliban terrorists. None living. It was so fucking idiotic. It's like watching Bizarro World TV, and Vice just had no problem with it. No problem whatsoever. It's okay for these guys to grab and capture and torture and put in a fucking hot room and secure them away with no water and no food for several days if they were a postman working for the Taliban. Okay? Turns out they weren't. Turns out what this warlord was doing was one of his brothers had been captured by the legitimate government in Afghanistan and was being held for trial. He was being given water. He was being given fucking food. So what the warlord did, our guy did, was he snatched up 4 of this person's brothers and was holding them hostage and said, okay, you can, if you give me back my brother, I'll give you your 4 brothers back, and I may or may not kill them. But I'm torturing them now. The 4 brothers had nothing to do with the Taliban. They were just in business and doing their thing, and or one of them was a fucking loomsmith or some shit. Nothing to do with the Taliban. But this is legitimate. And when the main guy comes back 2 days later and his henchmen won't fucking let the U.S. feed him or give him water, the 4 fucking prisoners, when the main guy comes in, you can see on his fucking face, he's about 44, 45, and you can see on his face, this dude is just a straight up fucking thug criminal. He is just a fucking criminal. And he is having to sit there and look at a 23-year-old talking down to him in his own country about how American values we don't allow you to just take people randomly as hostages because they happen to be the brother of someone, or, you know, who's holding your brother hostage. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's terrorism. Of course, that's what they said for the fucking cameras. What they said after the cameras were turned off, who the fuck knows? Because that is, of course, the Salvador option. Do what you want to the populations and civilians, as long as you can get rid of the insurgency. These were guys we were partnered with. This guy looked at him like he was going to eat him. If looks could speak, what he was saying to that guy, to that 23-year-old talking down to him in front of the camera, wink, wink, was, and he didn't give a shit about PR. He didn't give a shit about the PR Vice. We got to stage this scene, okay? Just sit here and listen to him for a second. Then we'll get to after. He didn't give a shit about that. He looked at him like he wanted to kill him and eat him for daring to talk to him. This is a fucking warlord. If civilians in Afghanistan talk to him that way, look at him the wrong fucking way. Think for a second they're in a position at the age of 23 to tell him how he should behave. You will be tortured and you will be fucking cooked and you will be fucking eaten. Period. And you can see it all over this man's face. And, by the way, you could see it on the fucking 23-year-old's face who was standing 15 feet away and had 3 or 4 armed guards between them while he told him this. For the sake of the fucking video. Of course, the next morning, the 4 guys were gone, and that was that. And, by the way, they did have to show the 4 guys were leaving in a truck. They had to go through the fucking gate manned by the fucking Marines there, the U.S. Marines there, who let them go. To be tortured, killed, raped, eaten, whatever the fuck it was. That's the right war. Barack Obama, the right war. Joe Biden. Did Joe Biden have anything to do with the Barack Obama days? Gee, let me think. The right war. So they say two-state solution Biden and his people have been talking about, supposedly pushing since this thing began, is completely off the table. Gee, I wonder why the Palestinians have a problem with this plan. The other problem with the plan is this. The Israelis will be allowed to retaliate anytime, anywhere, if and when Hamas strikes Israel. What's wrong with that? Israel has a long history of using sellout Palestinians to go into Gaza and launch some bullshit homemade rocket at a designated time and place, which will be recorded by the Israeli press, and then used to justify a retaliatory strike by Israel. And there's no mention of Hamas having any such right of retaliating if Israel strikes first. We also know from history that Israel will not adhere to any deal. We know that. They never do. They will get what they want, a few hostages back they can flout in front of their rioting population, and then they'll scrap the deal immediately in favor of bombing more innocent Palestinian children. Israel wants to steal the land and build settlements and casino resorts on it. Bibi held up a map of the new Middle East 2 weeks before October the 7th, 2023, showing Israel and Palestine combined into one nation. The one-state solution for all of you asswipes out there on the fake alt-left who've been saying, one-state solution. What's the one state on the map Israel was holding up? That's right. Israel. They want to wipe Palestine off the map and don't care how many Palestinians, or Israelis for that matter, have to die for it to happen. As I've stated before, Biden is run by neocons in his administration. Neocons and the servants of the military-industrial complex. He sent a Salvador option expert over to Israel to help them learn how to best deal with an insurgency, which is how they see the government of Gaza, by the way, since, of course, they see Gaza as Israel. That's an important distinction. They call the government of Gaza terrorists. They call them an insurgency. They are neither. The country that has killed 15,000 children, they're the terrorists. The country that wants to regime change the other, they're terrorists. The country whose fucking stated mission is this: we're going to use violence or the threat of violence and starvation in order to change the political, social, economic structure of Gaza, another country. And everyone sits back, like Vice did. Everyone sits back thinking, okay, this is just normal. This is natural. Yeah, you can't kill. You can kill a main fucking, postman from the Taliban, but you can't, because there's limits to this stuff. Wink, wink. Wait till the camera's on. Israel's a terrorist the terrorist nation, not fucking Hamas. Hamas isn't an insurgency. It's their government. Why does Israel see them as an insurgency? Because Israel sees Gaza as Israel. And they're terrorists because they oppose letting Israel do to Gazans what the Palestinian Authority lets happen to the people of the West Bank. We'll talk about the West Bank in a second. You understand? That's why they're terrorists. What did General Glenn, teach them? He taught them to use death squads to punish civilians to the point where they themselves would get rid of the insurgency or Hamas. You know, like those crazed settlers the IDF recruited in the West Bank to terrorize and kill Palestinians until the U.S. had to tell them enough was enough. Shit like that. By the way, there's an article right here. Israel must stop unprecedented bloodshed in the West Bank. And of course, there is no Hamas in the West Bank. But they are doing it in order to, they're letting these fucking psychotic settlers run rampant, killing, burning, chasing, maiming, raping Palestinians. Because they are allowing them to punish Palestinians in the West Bank in order to put pressure on Hamas in Gaza. That's literally what we're doing. And my guess is, because they are a true set of death squads, and they were remember, they were fucking given designation by the IDF. And in fact, there was some point where we were sending not only aid to them, but apparently we were also promising some kind of fucking retirement plan in the United States for services rendered to these fucking Zionists, these terrorists, like the Takfaris and Wahhabis that we get out of Saudi Arabia and other places, and use them to destabilize other countries. We're doing the same thing with the goddamn settlers in Israel. Facts. Target, kidnap, torture, starve, beat, burn civilians. That's what Glenn taught them. That's what Biden's guy taught the most moral army in the world 10 days after October the 7th, 2023. And that's what they've been doing ever since, folks. And now that Gaza's on the verge of complete and total destruction, and the covetous Zionists in Israel and elsewhere are so close to seeing their 100-year-old bloody wet dream come to fruition, it is childish and infantile to believe somehow President Biden is a good faith actor in the negotiation process. To that end, I present to you Jake Sullivan. I just showed you the video, lying to the press about pretty much everything he said. He claims Israel accepted the peace proposal, and they still accept the peace proposal. They did not, and they do not. He claims Hamas has not responded regarding the deal. They have. I have an article on my website talking about how they, in public, responded to the fucking deal when they finally got it. He also said, Hamas may choose to let the war and the suffering continue. That wouldn't be terribly out of character for any vicious and brutal terrorist group and evil dictator. Are you kidding me? Hamas accepted a peace deal back in March and was very public about it. With regard to this one, they've openly stated it is fine as a start point for further negotiations, but that some things have to be addressed, like the ones I mentioned above, and more. And we'll get to the more down here at the bottom. Netanyahu has flat out said he will not accept the deal, period. If he did, the far-right Zionist freaks in his coalition will immediately withdraw and Bibi himself will be out of office. That's to say nothing of the fake reservist video claiming they'll kick off a civil war in Israel if Bibi signs the deal. And of course, back in March, the Zionists did not accept the deal when Hamas did. All of what I just wrote is public knowledge and can be found easily on my website, for example, which means the Biden White House is just lying on behalf of glorious Israel. So, what else is new? And who exactly are the terrorists anyway? I would say the folks using force to change the political structure of Gaza would be the terrorists, especially when you consider they've already killed over 15,000 children to do it. Also, keep in mind this. Now, this is something that was brought out by somebody, I forget who it was. I wish I could give them credit. I can't remember. Biden, when he announced this deal, claimed that if Hamas signs away the it was Al Jazeera, if Hamas signs away the sovereignty of Gaza to the bloody terrorists who've been coveting it for their entire lives, then 600 trucks a day are ready to come in and deliver aid to the people of Gaza. What does that mean? That means the Biden administration just admitted Israelis have been deliberately withholding aid to the people of Gaza in order to starve them out of their homes. That, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is the admission of a war crime and, by the way, terrorism. Biden just admitted glorious Israel committed yet another war crime, using starvation of the civilian population as a tool of regime change. He admits that, and again, no one says shit. It's like every fucking media outlet, including the alternative media outlets, are all Vice. If you don't know what Vice News is, they're a fucking CIA op. And if you're a big Tim Pool fan, where did Tim get his start? Before he went over to fucking Occupy with a live feed so that, as he said himself, the police and the FBI could recognize leaders in the Occupy movement and start working on them from the outside. That's how Tim Pool got his start. That's why he's a multimillionaire now, just so you know. As I said when this fake peace plan came out, it's a sham they intended to use to paint Hamas as the obstacle to peace when everyone knows it's a covetous Zionist and Bibi trying to keep himself out of prison. And here's the bullshit statement from Sullivan to prove it. And just so you know, I'm not bullshitting you. Oh, well, yeah. Here's another thing, too. The New York Times just came out. There's a big thing that came out this morning showing, yeah, glorious Israel are the ones who have been using social media campaigns to propagandize the American people, to get them to stand with glorious Israel. Right there. Now, they claim this weekend, they claimed it was fucking China and Russia and Iran. Oh my God, China, Russia, and Iran, they're using social media to turn to get the American people to be on the side of the Palestinians, the evil terrorists. That's what they said. That was a big news. Big news. They had no evidence. Big news, no evidence. Big news. Here's the reality. The reality is, it is Israel. And it wasn't Russia and China and fucking Iran. But it was Israel. There it is. Right there. New York Times. There's, from Press TV yesterday, Hamas said, yes, this is a starting point. We can meet with them. We can talk about it. But they said Israel won't talk about it. So who's dragging their feet? Who wants nothing to do with this fucking peace deal? Clearly it's fucking Israel and not Hamas. There's two articles about the unprecedented bloodshed in the West Bank I put up yesterday. One from Daily Sabbath, the other from Press TV. Be my guest and take a look at it. This is what I'm talking about. I mean, this Vice News thing, where this perversion of fucking thought is just embedded in the story. It's perfectly acceptable for us, for the United States fucking military. And I am a military brat. I don't know anything about the military. I'm not claiming to have been military. But I am a military brat. And I know my father wasn't there for 2 years or 3. He was there his entire fucking career and then worked as a fucking contractor for the military afterwards. His entire goddamn life. From when he was 17 until when he was in his late 50s, 60s. He worked for the military, Department of Defense, one way or the other. To use the fucking military to stand next to fucking drug lords, thugs, murderers, rapists, people you wouldn't leave your children with. To force our fucking military guys to go out there and not only stand with them, but defend them as they're committing horrendous fucking atrocities. I don't know what that does to the fucking, to our soldiers. I don't know what that does to our soldiers. Told we got to go defend freedom and democracy, and oh my God, they attacked us on 9/11. And we get there, and it's like when they talked about, it's like, you know, you go back and look, and all these different soldiers coming back from Vietnam, and they flat out said, we're killing the wrong Vietnamese. I mean, that's just got to be, it's got to be crushing, especially to some young guy or girl who goes into the military, all gung-ho and freedom and democracy and shining city on the hill, and then they come to realize, you know, we're standing with the worst of the worst in that country in order to regime change it and put them in power. Good God, that's got to be depressing for them. It's got to be a real fucking eye-opening experience. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is, yeah, that's exactly what we thought was going to happen with this bullshit fucking peace deal. The Biden administration has reneged on the two-state solution. And, of course, in so doing, and so talking about this bullshit, Biden admitted that Israel is committing fucking war crimes and using starvation as a weapon against the people of Gaza. This is terrorism. We stand, once again, you can go back to Korea, you can go back to Vietnam. We were on, people talk about the Great War, and we were on the right side. We were on the right side. Slowly. Time magazine said the guy who's leading the wrong side was Man of the Year twice. And people who ended up with children becoming president, they were financially invested with them. However, we ended up being on the right side of that one for a time. But since then, we haven't been on the right side of a goddamn war since. Not fucking once. Not once. Barack Obama said that Iraq was the wrong war, and then they manufactured ISIS bullshit so you can go back in and stay in the wrong war. Saying that Afghanistan was the right war, clearly it wasn't. It wasn't for many reasons, one of which was Taliban, even according to their story, had nothing to do with 9/11 and offered to give bin Laden up if we had any evidence, which is what you have to do in a fucking extradition case anyway. When presented with that offer, not once but twice, George Bush said, fuck you. We don't want him. Because what the whole point was to bomb fucking the Taliban out of power. So it was way the wrong war. But even on their level, you go back to that Vice News thing I saw, even on that level, it was such, it was watching these guys try to fucking, in front of the cameras, try to fucking deal with these killers, these thugs, these criminals, this proxy army. As the Salvador option would put it, these death squads, utilizing them in order to chase the legitimate government from village to village, from town to town, and get them out and get them killed and get them out of the way so they could regime change fucking Afghanistan one little piece at a time using monsters. And now we look at what's happening in Israel and in Gaza. And here we are again, using monsters. People will say that, Israel has such a hold over the United States. Zionists certainly do, but there are other banking interests and financial interests and business interests that are being hurt inside Israel and outside. And Saudi Arabia and BRICS nations, they are all sanctioning, quietly of course, but they are all sanctioning Israeli businesses, and it's hurting Israel on the inside. It's hurting the United States. That we don't care. Or at least the Biden administration doesn't care. And at least the elected officials in this country don't care. You know. I'm not entirely sure where the worst, most powerful Zionists are. Tel Aviv or London and New York City. To be honest with you. Or Raytheon. Northrop Grumman. Because they definitely want to keep fucking pumping weapons out. They definitely want to keep that money flowing in. You know. They don't care where those fucking bombs go. They don't care who those bombs kill. They just keep getting paid for it. Anyway, thought I'd share that with you. You want to see something? Let me show you something. Hang on. I'm not saying anything. That's cricket. She's like, don't use me as a prop. Oh, I'm not using you as a prop, cricket. An appetizer, maybe. Have a good